Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our tactical breakdown series, our show in which we look at the players that have been linked to Arsenal in a statistical and analytical way with the help of an expert to give you guys all of the insight possible on Arsenal's transfer targets this window. 2022 is here and we're starting off the January window with a big one. We covered Bruno Guimaraes in the summer window, but we are going to be covering him again in 2022 because the links have not gone away. In fact, they have only increased, with Arsenal said to be at the head of the queue to be looking to bring in the Lyon midfielder. Reports suggest that a £38 million deal could be agreed this January. However, there are many other rumours suggesting that a deal would have to wait for the summer. Everton and Newcastle also interested in the player. And Kia Jarabchin, yes, the infamous agent, also said to be involved as an intermediary in any possible deal to bring Bruno Guimaraes to Arsenal. If you are an enjoyer of Arsenal transfer news, we do a show every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. So make sure you tune in to keep up to date with all the latest Arsenal transfer news. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. To give you a little bit of insight of how these shows work, so we kick off by going through the expert insight. We'll be joined by Jeremy Smith to talk about the player. We then go into a statistical focus and basically compare Guimaraes' statistics to other central midfielders, both at Arsenal and that have been linked with Arsenal, to give you a better idea of how he compares. And then we're going to jump into the chat box. I like doing these shows live now to get our viewers' thoughts and feelings about the player as well. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world, if you are indeed tuning in. But we start off the show, as always, by jumping to our expert. I'm joined by Jeremy Smith. You can find him on Twitter at JeremySmith98. He will give you all of the insight from a French football expert's perspective. So let's hear what he has to say.
So another transfer window has just opened, and so obviously straight away we have to go to the Arsenal and Lyon midfielder rumours. We've done our a lot of times. We've done Bruno Guimaraes once before, and it's time for Guimaraes links again. And to be honest, from everything that I said in the last video about him in August, I don't think there's actually a huge amount to add. I think he's sort of carried on where he left off. He's had a really good, consistent start to the season, which actually, when you look at the form of Lyon in general, is kind of commendable. He's started most matches for Lyon. They've got kind of an embarrassment of riches in midfield, and the main problem for Lyon has been sort of putting away chances and an awful defence this year. The midfield has been reasonably consistent, and although there's been a bit of rotation, I think he's played in all but one match, I think, and started all but one of those that he's played in. So certainly with sort of a lot of inconsistency around him, he's been one of the kind of people that Peter Bosz has relied on more than most. He's basically, as I said, more of the same. I think he's a quality number 6 or number 8. He can play in a double pivot or in a midfield 3. Tends to sort of play a little bit more to the left, even though he's right-footed. And if you're going to compare him to Aouar, I'd say that he's less of an attack-minded player, in that I think Aouar, you expect him to play sort of nearer the opposition box, sort of very near the end of the attack, either the finishing or the assist or maybe the penultimate pass. Whereas I think Guimaraes is more likely to kind of start moves from a little bit further back. He's got a very good high press that he sort of brought with him from Brazil. So he's able to, he's one of Lyon's first ball winners further up the pitch. When I say he's a number 6, I wouldn't say he's a sort of out-and-out defensive midfielder, but he's certainly got defensive qualities, a good tackle on him, obviously a good reading of the game, which helps him be in the right place at the right time. So, for a team that looks to win the ball off the opposition very quickly, he'd be crucial in that. And then once he's got the ball, his big strength is his passing, short and long. He's got really good vision, and obviously, as you'd expect of a Brazilian, very comfortable on the ball. I say he's not as attacking minded as Aouar, and although he's got a couple of assists this year, he's got no goals, and he probably could do a little more attacking wise. But I suppose in theory, at Lyon anyway. There's other players around him who should be doing that job more than him. So yeah, I think all round quality. I think, as I said last time, there's an element of flakiness, but certainly not to the same extent as Aouar. And of the two, for me, Guimaraes would definitely be more likely to succeed in the Premier League. Firstly, in terms of attitude, but secondly, I just think he's more physically robust as well. He's not a dirty player, but he can certainly put it about if he needs to. When Lyon sort of get involved in any fights, which is relatively often, he's often there in the centre of it, not getting into trouble, but he's certainly not sort of shying away from anything or anyone. And I think there probably is a move to be made there. Lyon are a real mess at the moment. They've had a terrible start to the season, or first half of the season. Bosch is under pressure. Juninho is obviously closely linked to all the Brazilian players and was a huge part in Guimaraes coming to Lyon. He's abruptly left the club as well. So Guimaraes is probably feeling very unsettled. He's always said he'd like to play in England. So this is probably as good a time as any to make a move and try to test his and Lyon's will.
A massive thank you, as always, to Jeremy for helping us out. As I said, you can follow him on Twitter at Jeremy Smith. 98 is a really good follow and always good to chat with about any French footballing players, of which Guimaraes certainly is one, playing his trade in Lyon this season. We continue on our journey by going into the comparison. Now, I thought it would be best to compare Guimaraes to Bissouma, a player that, of course, I know a lot of people wanted to see join Arsenal in the summer, because if he's someone that you desperately wanted, seeing how Guimaraes compares to him is obviously going to be very beneficial. Kessié is also another player that not necessarily has been linked with Arsenal heavily, but a player that people consider very much at the upper echelons as available midfielders that are out there at the moment. And of course, our current main starting central midfielder, Thomas Partey. So they're the players that we're going to be comparing Guimaraes to in regards to tactical and statistical analysis. So we start off by looking at their heat maps. And the main thing that you see is that Guimaraes, as Jeremy Smith so eloquently put, likes to put it about a bit. And he certainly does that. You can see how far reaching his area of effect on the field is. Can play on the left-hand side and tends to when he skews that side, but can also play as a single pivot in a 4-3-3. And when people talk about the way that Arsenal want to develop their system moving forwards, how we maybe can unleash Thomas Partey moving forwards, I think what you'll see is Guimaraes kind of playing in that deep central pivot role when we do eventually move to a 4-3-3, which is something I think that Mikel Arteta will want to do and emulate kind of the system that Manchester City have used in the past. Defensive duels wise and how he compares that, he comes out very, very well. And this is why he can play in that deep midfield role. 9.69 defensive duels is far higher than any of the others on this list. And the success rate of winning those defensive duels certainly stacks up to some of the other players in this. Ever slightly less successful than Bissouma, but better and more efficient in those defensive duels than both Kessié and Partey this season. When we talk about interceptions, not as high as the others, 3.52. Bissouma coming out really well, nearly 5 interceptions per game, showing his quality in the Premier League. But when you look at the amount of this guy presses, you're going to see why interceptions maybe isn't something we need to be too worried about. Losses, though, loses the ball more than any of the other players. And when we come on to the passing statistics, there'll be some context applied. However, of those losses, he is the kind of the most conservative about when he does lose the ball. Doesn't tend to be in his own half. In fact, only 33.2% of the losses that he makes are in his own half. When he's trying to play kind of progressively and offensively, that's when he tends to lose it. Whereas players like Partey and Bissouma in the kind of low to mid 40 ranges of percentages for their losses, you can see that, it's not a big concern seeing the losses number a little bit higher when that percentage of those being in his own half are as low as they are. Recoveries, though, he does stand out quite nicely, 7.75, higher than Partey and Kessié, not as high as Bissouma, but 48% of his recoveries, which is the second highest, just behind Kessié, is happening in the opposition half, which is really, really strong. Regarding pressures, this is where he really stands out. And when we've got a side like Mikel Arteta likes to play very aggressively, want to get the ball back as soon as possible, 22.6 pressures per game. That's not this season, that's per 90, averaged across the campaign. Massively impressive for Guimaraes there. It's the lowest in terms of success of winning the ball back within 5 seconds of his team of a pressure at 30.9%, but it's only just under 5% away from the highest, which is Bissouma. But the fact he's got 22.6 pressures per game. Shows the energy, and that linked into kind of the heat map that we saw earlier on. Now we move on to the passing. Passing accuracy, all four of our candidates here are very similar, around the 88 mark, 87 to 89 mark of those passes. But he does pass more often than any others. He's definitely kind of leaned upon by Lyon to be one of those players that is a very instrumentative figure in the Lyon side, with 66.85 passes on average per game, far outstripping that of Bissouma, Kessié and Partey. In terms of his long passing, he's also impressive. 4.69 long passes per match, higher than the others. Likes to switch the play, likes to find the wingers in the wide areas as well. 60.9% passing accuracy of those is the second highest on this list as well, despite having the most of those long passes too. And we go into the really impressive stuff, which is where we see how direct Guimaraes is as a passer. 11.07 passes into the final third of the pitch, average per game, more than double that of Bissouma, nearly double that of Kessié, and even better than Partey. Now, when we were looking at Partey in the summer of 2020, the way in which Partey passed into the final third was a really big kind of attractive part of his game. Guimaraes is even better than Partey at this, 11.07 with an 82% passing accuracy. Not only does he pass more into the final third than any of the others on this list, he's actually more accurate than the others on this list as well. And it gets even better because passes into the box are even more frequent than the others. 2.4 passes on average per game into the box. And it's therefore no surprise that he has 5 assists this season for Lyon in both Liga and in the Europa League too. It's just impressive wherever you look at this guy. He's just such a key figure for Lyon. And at £38 million, an absolute steal. Regarding kind of the way in which he passes, he's got a very good passing ratio, 18.564 passes for every 9.94 backward passes. He's double the amount of forward passes to backward passes, which is very strong. In terms of dribbling, he does come out pretty well on here as well. Second highest in terms of the accurate, or rather success rate of his dribbling successes. I'm really impressed by the way that he kind of takes the ball, carries it forward. He's not afraid to get on the ball anywhere near as much. But one of the big kind of successes from this list is how good Partey is. 76.6% success rate with his dribbling is brilliant. And Guimaraes is going to have to really step up his dribbling game to match that. But when you combine the fact that he dribbles nearly 5 times per game, it shows how confident he is as a player, and certainly something to really get behind. Progressive runs, unsurprisingly, you'll see him outstrip the others as well, 2.55 progressive runs per game. And then shooting, which is really interesting because Partey, despite all of his failures of shooting this season, has still got the second highest shooting accuracy at 29.4%. He's not a guy that tends to shoot from outside the box. He hasn't scored this season, and he only has 0.61 shots per game. When you see kind of the map of where he takes those shots from, you can understand why. He's not someone that's going to be getting into the box. He's got quite a low touch in the box percentage and frequency too. But that's not why we've got Bruno Guimaraes in the side. He's the guy that's going to sit, be disciplined, and be progressive with his play, but also be confident to carry the ball when he needs to. Bruno Guimaraes, for me, as Van Toecker in the chat box says there, is the missing piece of Arsenal's puzzle and is by far my number one pick to be Arsenal's new central midfielder. I know that Edu loves him. I know that Arsenal are interested in him. It's now just a case of willing this to happen. Arsenal Twitter, Arsenal Instagram, do your thing. Plea with this guy to come to Arsenal because he is such a good player, and Arsenal cannot afford to let him move anywhere else. He really genuinely needs to be brought in as much as feasibly possible. To finish off the show, we do like to get the thoughts of you guys in the chat box. So if you do want to throw in your thoughts and feelings around the player, do indeed start throwing them into the chat. We'll go through as many of your comments as possible. Bernard says the perfect centre midfielder. Damn. I love that. Matt, though, says, trying to stay a bit grounded, not getting my hopes up. I don't blame you, mate. Sam says, Partey's accuracy is strangely high for what I witnessed. I know. Maybe we focus very much on his long shooting as being so poor. Daniel says, to be fair to Partey, it's pretty impressive that he still looks relatively good here, even though he's having what would be described as a bad season. And maybe that's the context that Arsenal fans miss sometimes with Partey. Our expectations of him are so high that maybe he doesn't correlate to that. But actually what I think you get from Partey is still a very solid player. And if we were to add Guimaraes to him in midfield, it would be absolutely brilliant. Zana says, didn't know Lyon were in such disarray and Guimaraes may be unsettled. Perhaps the best time to pluck him from their clutches. Do it now. Half South African says, would be the best signing since Tomiyasu. Get him in, says Matt. It's a no-brainer. Sell Partey and get Bruno. Wait, what? Says Matt G. Get him now, says Manouche. His stats are immense this season. Akshat says, don't know why. I have a feeling this is one of those players that will be linked forever but never ends up joining. Really hope I'm wrong, though, as he looks a really good player. J Dime says, Tom, stop, man. Now, nothing before. But Bruno will do. I mean, he is going to be the guy. He is going to be the one if we can get him in. George says, Kessier was my number one till watching this very show. Springer says, I heard he gets dribbled past a lot, and because Tierney always pushes up, it's a risk for no cover. That's an interesting one. Trying to look at kind of dribbles stats of where he ranks. Let's have a look at this. Versus dribbles. Attacking number of times dribbled past, number of tackles. He ranks as, I mean, comparatively to Thomas Partey and Yves Bissouma, he does rank quite highly in terms of the number of times dribbled past plus the number of tackles. Number of times dribbled past by an opposing player, he does rank out the highest as well. An area of his game, maybe because he's not the fastest, he's not the most agile. 2.24 per 90 dribbled past, 1.36 for Partey, 0.45 for Kessier, and 0.22 for Bissouma. There could be questions about that. So that's a fair criticism of his game. We've been very, very complimentary of Guimaraes looking at the other side of his game, the number of times he is dribbled past. You know, maybe it's a bit of a concern, but maybe something that would be developed. He's only 24. He's certainly someone that could still improve in Arsenal's team, and maybe that's an area of his game that could certainly be proved as well. MJJL asking the chat, are we making any moves for him? The latest information is Arsenal are definitely interested in him. The price is £38 million. Will we sign him? We're going to have to wait and see. I absolutely, Bernard, think that we have enough to buy him in this window. I would not be doubtful of our ability to go and buy him this window. It's just whether or not it will happen or not this window. Sam says, oh no, he's not perfect. No one's perfect. There's only very few that are there out there. There's always going to be elements of his game that he can improve, and the part where he can get dribbled past quite easily is going to be one that he needs to improve on. But I do think that, you know, we've got enough to cover him if we do indeed intend to add him to the squad, at least. We're going to finish things off there. Do drop a like on the video. A lot of effort goes into making these shows, so I would really appreciate you showing some support with a smash of that big thumbs up button. Share the video around to your friends if they're still unsure about Bruno Guimaraes. Maybe they'll be convinced. And of course, if you are new to the channel, subscribe. We do a show every single day at 8 a.m. UK time, keeping you up to date with everything that's going on in the world of Arsenal. Tomorrow, I'm going to be joined by Clive from the Arsenal Vision podcast to go through all of Arsenal's transfer targets this January, having a good discussion and chat about that. That'll be at 4 p.m. UK time, but I'll also be live at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning as well as usual. I have enjoyed this very, very much. Always do, talking about Bruno Guimaraes. I look forward to discussing him further, and fingers crossed we can get a deal over the line done for him. See you very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.